So, Queen Brittany, I just want, if we can all just imagine that if even half of the people who menstruate embodied this inner season, because this is on average, this is happening every 28 days, right? Everyone's different, but on average, this process, this guide for self-care that I just described is happening every month. So every month you engage in a time of self-reflection. That's winter. Every month you engage in a time of planning what you're going to do for the next phase. Every month, you implement what you planned in the prior phase. Every month, you have a time where you declutter toxic people, places, and things, where you acknowledge your accomplishments, big and small, and you get ready to go back into winter. Sis, this is powerful.
They been cramping my style all week. Craving chocolate trees, checking pants, checking seeds, sipping herbal tea and fight for menstrual equity. Jeez. Hey, I kick cramps at. 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 You're now tuned in to the Kick Cramps Ass podcast with your host, Brittany Walker, advocating for menstrual equity, period poverty, and womb wellness. New episodes on Menstruation Mondays.
Happy Menstruation Monday, and welcome back to the Kick Cramps Ass podcast, where I am your host, Brittany Walker, and today is part 2 of last week's episode, From Shame to Seasons, Deconstructing Menstrual Stigma with Dr. Carmen McNeil-Clinkscales. She provided so much valuable information regarding the menstrual cycle, your inner seasons, and how we can definitely start breaking the stigma amongst ourselves, our family, and within our culture, so globally we can come together and have a more peaceful menstrual cycle journey. Now we're going to go ahead and cut to our first commercial break, and we will be right back with you.
Tired of clunky remote recordings? Level up with Riverside FM Pro. Get studio quality audio and video, effortless editing with powerful AI tools, and seamless live streaming and collaboration. Become a pro of Riverside.fm and unlock the full potential of your content. Sign up today and make your voice heard. Visit the link in the description of this episode to discover more. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back from that commercial break. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. Now, let's go ahead and get back into this educational and much needed interview with Dr. Carmen. Now, Dr. Carmen, during the winter or low energy phases of our cycle, societal conditioning tells us that resting is equivalent to failing. How does the inner seasons framework help rewrite that narrative psychologically, moving from a place of luteal phase guilt to strategic, data-driven self-compassion?
Yes. So, as we all know from the inner seasons that we just discussed, winter is that time of self-reflection, of going inward, right? And so, yes, this is a time where we may not want to have a lot of stuff on our social calendar. We may not want to do a whole bunch of things, but this is required for self-care. Rest is a requirement. We are no longer succumbing to the distraction, the disorienting, and the disabling of the lies of hurried sickness. No, free yourself from that. It was not designed for you. So during this winter, this is a part of your self-care. And you can educate other people if you like, right? You can say, I'm not available for that, or that doesn't work for me. You don't have to have a whole lot of explanation. And actually, I encourage you not to have a whole lot of explanation. Just that doesn't work for me at this time. Or I'm not available at that time. Don't go into explaining stuff. You start losing your power. Okay. And so winter, this low energy phase, for most people, it's a low energy phase. of the cycle, it's required for you to step into your power. It's required for you to feel empowered. It's required for you to not succumb to feeling disempowered and disabled. All the D's that we were talking about before. It's required. And so if we miss this, then we're missing the sacredness of the cycle, of the system, of the strategy, of the system for self-care that God gifted us with. Don't block the blessings. If you miss the benefits of winter, you are not getting enough rest to do the remaining things that happen in the cycle or the phases that are coming up next. So winter, going inward, slowing down, or whatever it is you need to do in winter to rejuvenate, to rest, to restore, that is what needs to happen. It is critical. I just want to say again, do not block the blessings that God gave us. We were divinely given this system, this internal system of self-care. We have it. Everybody don't have it. So since we have it, let's take advantage of the system, the cycle that was divinely gifted to us.
I absolutely love it. Tap into the powers you were blessed with. Everybody has their own, but if you are not properly, like you said, rejuvenating and pouring back into yourself and paying attention to your body, how can you even succeed or blossom with those gifts?
Exactly. Exactly. It just
Absolutely.
makes sense, right?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. Now, your work emphasizes that period positive conversations can lead to true intergenerational healing. For families who have inherited decades of reproductive shame and euphemisms, what does it look like to practically break that cycle and initiate a healthier, anatomically precise narrative for the next generation?
Yes. So, one of the things I talk about in my workshops is that it's important to acknowledge what I call the red thread, red RED, the red thread. And what this means is this is the thread that has been woven through generations of how the menstrual cycle is talked about, the nonverbal and the verbal communication, how it's couched, or even if it's talked about. I mentioned earlier that I'd interviewed lots of people for a sabbatical in terms of how they learned about the menstrual cycle. And some of them, when they started their periods, reached menarche, the first period, they had learned nothing about the menstrual cycle at
Mm-hmm.
all. Nothing. So we need to acknowledge the red thread. So that means going back and reflecting on what you learned as a child growing up about the menstrual cycle. If you can, talking to your mother, your aunties, what did
Mm-hmm.
they learn as children growing up about the menstrual cycle? And if you can, what did your nana, what did your grandmother, learn? Your great aunties, what did they learn about the menstrual cycle, when they were children? How was it talked about? So that's the red thread. So first we need to acknowledge whatever is on that red thread that's been woven throughout the generations. And so I'm just going to go out on a limb and say for a lot of people, it either was non-existent, meaning they didn't talk about it, they said nothing, which has just as much of a negative effect and impact, and or it was negative, right?
Right.
And so for either of those, meaning no one said nothing or it was negative, we need to acknowledge the impact of that red thread. What was the impact on your grandmother? What was the impact on your mother? What was the impact on you in terms of understanding the menstrual cycle? For most people, I'll just go out on a limb, and for most people, there was not any positive words used associated with the menstrual cycle. Again, only that you were not pregnant. That was like the only positive thing. Okay. Woo, Lord, you're not pregnant yet. But there were no words of body positivity. No words of, look, you have been gifted and blessed with this internal system that shows you how to take care of yourself. Let me show you how to use it. Right. So the first thing we need to do, acknowledge that red thread, acknowledge its impact, and then decide to make a change, whether you do have your own children, whether you might have children in the future, whether you're choosing to not have children, or whether you won't have any children in the future, you can still impact the next generations, right? There are all of our community children and their community children who we have the power to impact positively, and changing the dialogue of the red thread and changing its impact into using words of body positivity, in terms of that red thread. There is a film, a documentary called The Red Moon, I believe it's what it's called. It's about menstruation and culture and politics, right? The
Yep.
politics of gender. And in that, it's a great one. It's probably about 15 years old, but it's really good. And in that film, like they have OBGYNs, they have mental health professionals, anthropologists, all in this documentary. It's fantastic.
Yes.
And in it, there's this conversation about, well, why or how did this, negativity about women's bodies come about? And so there was one suggestion, as I said, that there was a time that women's bodies were revered, but then with this emphasis on science, we sought to get rid of what was alternate healers. No,
Hmm.
women were the real healers. And so this getting rid of the so-called alternate healers, the medicine women, they couch it in the film as called the witch's wound being
Right.
wounded, right? And so with the influx of science and all this kind of stuff, the healers were thought of as like witches, like you doing something,
Yeah.
bad and we don't understand it, right? And so these healers then were stopped from speaking out, and sharing their stories about their bodies. And so over the years, women have held this sort of trauma of, speaking up in our bodies, speaking up about our bodies. So once we know and recognize this, we have the ability then to change this, to shift this, to transform this, in terms of communicating to the next generations. I was so happy as an adult. I had a conversation with my mom who she's going to be 80 next year. As an adult, just a couple
Hmm.
years ago, I had a conversation with my mom about her menstrual cycle, what she learned, what she didn't learn. And it was fantastic. It was amazing. And I'm not saying that that's going to be the same for everybody, because remember, so many folks have internalized the negative aspects that they don't want to talk about.
Right.
But for me, it was amazing to have this conversation. I don't have any biological daughters, but I have lots of community daughters, that I
Right.
interact with. And so I'm able to help shift, this conversation around, the menstrual cycle, shifting it from, shame to self-care, right? And so that is part of what I have taken on as, one of my reasons for being on the planet is I can help shift and contribute to this intergenerational healing.
Absolutely. Come on for knowing your purpose. I'm here for it. I'm here for it. You have to serve, educate, and heal others. That's all what it's about, knowing your mission.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
we're gonna cut to our next commercial break and we will be right back with you.
Periods got you down? Kick cramps to the curb with Pilates for periods. Our online program combines targeted Pilates, soothing yoga, calming meditation, and breath work to help you manage your menstrual cycle naturally. Feel stronger, calmer, and more in control. Reclaim your comfort. Visit Pilates for Periods YouTube page linked in the description of this episode and start your journey to a more manageable cycle today. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back from that commercial break, everybody. We hope that you enjoyed it. Now, Dr. Carmen McNeil-Clinkscales, you also advocate for a crucial, often overlooked piece of the ecosystem, educating boys, fathers, and male loved ones about menstruation. What shifts occur in family dynamics, interpersonal relationships, and community support when men are actively integrated into reproductive health literacy?
I love talking about this part. All of it. In the documentary that I mentioned, The Red Moon, there's
Mhm.
actually a man, anthropologist. He is a professor in London somewhere. I think
Mhm.
his name is Chris Knight. And from the perspective of anthropology, he says in that documentary that women's blood, when they're menstruating, women's blood was used to keep her connected to her body, right? Women's blood, which was used to keep her connected to her body, connected to the sacred, now with the influx of science, is now the source of her disconnection and disempowerment. This is a man saying this. And so he said that this disconnection and this disempowerment keeps her from understanding the power of menstruation and the potential of togetherness, and really preventing women from knowing about their own power. I was just so much in appreciation of this man, making these statements, which I agree, with all of them. But for a man to make them is even more powerful, because unfortunately, a lot of the negative dialogue, a lot of the stigma stuff, frankly, it originated from men. That's where it tended to originate from. When I talked about the witch's wound, it was the men who were calling the women healers, the medicine women, witches, because they didn't understand it. So I think it's so important for men, males, boys, fathers, uncles, grandfathers to understand this basic body literacy. It's basic body literacy. We understand all of our anatomy. We know hands, toes, da, 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 da. This is just part of the basic body literacy. A lot of the teasing that happens on the schoolyard is boys, and I'm not saying girls don't do it, because they do, but it's boys making fun of and joking and making wisecracks and bullying and teasing. And so there's a short little film clip that I use in one of my workshops where there's a group of teen boys, and one of them says, I'm so grateful, he said, we don't really understand it, so we just joke about it. We don't really understand it, so we just make fun of it, to ease their discomfort. So I was like, okay, we need to educate these boys about this menstrual cycle. And it is so powerful. I was speaking with a health educator who was doing she teaches like a puberty class, adolescent puberty class. And the class is mixed in terms of separating the genders. Boys and girls are in the same class. And she said she asked, particularly the fellas, the boys in the class, what would you do if you were at school? This is after they had been in the class for quite a while. She asked, what would you do if you were at school and you noticed that a girl had bled through, her underwear, and you could see it in her pants or what have you? What would you do? And the boys were like, oh, I would go up to her privately and I would whisper and say, you know what? I think you may have had an accident. Let me walk you to the restroom, or let me walk you to, the nurse's office. So powerful. That's what we are needing, more of, right? Because maybe she wasn't aware. And so when men who are in relationships with women, whether that is men in relationships with their sisters, with their mothers, with a romantic partner, whoever, it is so powerful when they understand the menstrual cycle. So if we are talking about a romantic relationship and the man understands the menstrual cycle, he understands his partner's inner seasons because she has taught him and he has been paying attention, then he can support her when she needs support in different phases of the menstrual cycle. So maybe his partner is in winter and he has been paying attention and he knows that his partner wants more alone time, during winter. Maybe he knows the type of music that she wants to listen to during winter. Whatever that is, he can help create the space for her in her home. If they have children, get the kid. He can take the kids out the house, right? So she can have that me time, that quiet time, whatever that is. Maybe she's in spring and she is, planning for what she's going to do in summer, and she needs that focused time to do that planning. Maybe he provides her with the tea that she likes to drink when she's doing her planning, so they can be of support. And so we're also talking about normalizing the conversations. It is frankly a shame. I have a workshop called Power to the Period, and it's for teens and preteens. And unfortunately, as a part of that workshop, I have to educate these girls about the pushback that they will get, about the bullying that can occur, about the teasing that can occur. And I give them languaging on, what to say, when that occurs, or what to do when that occurs. And in an ideal world, I wouldn't need to incorporate that,
Mhm.
you know, into the workshop. And so this is what we're talking about the power of men and boys understanding just some basics around the menstrual cycle. Shifts a lot of dynamics.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's so important to teach them at an earlier age. So
Yes.
again, once they become fathers, spouses, things of that sort, or even if they are homosexual men, just maybe you're a manager, maybe you're going to have colleagues. So these are still things that you need to know if you're not going to have, you know, a female partner. So again, just knowing so you're not feeling because for first of all, you shouldn't be feeling uncomfortable. That's the first thing. Why are you uncomfortable about something that has absolutely nothing to do with you? And then why are you uncomfortable or shaming us for a process on how your mother brought you into this world?
Yes. And so I have found that many men want to know about the menstrual cycle. Not all, I can't say all, but many men want to know. The problem is that girls and women have been socialized to keep it from men, right?
Hmm.
And that's where the shame lies, the secrecy we were talking about before. So because we've been socialized to keep it a secret, we're not supposed to let people know when we're on our period, all that, keep our period care products hidden away. Because we've been socialized to keep it from men, they don't know. They literally do not know. And so they're in the dark. Like, what? I'm hearing people say this, I'm hearing people say that. I don't really know what's going on. I don't have any basic body literacy. So I really don't understand what's going on. And sometimes men are shamed for not knowing. And I'm just going to say that it's not completely their fault for not knowing because we have been trained to keep it from them. So, how are they going
Right.
to know if we don't talk to them about it? How are they going to know if we don't educate them about it? So, when they do know, their anxiety, their discomfort about it because they
Right.
feel like they're walking on eggshells. Like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how this thing works. So I'm just going to leave for 7 days. Like, no.
Right. Right.
So that's part of that cycle of what's happening in terms of the shame and the stigma is we have been taught, women have been taught, girls have been taught to keep it from boys and men. So they don't have a clue as far as what's going on.
That definitely makes sense. Now, at Dr. Carmen Empowers, your ultimate goal is building braver, freer communities by breaking the silence around our most human experiences. When a community collectively drops the stigma and adopts health autonomy, what macro level changes do you see in collective mental and emotional well being?
Yeah, so I definitely see this whole stigma around the menstrual cycle as a social injustice issue, right? This is definitely socially unjust. And there's lots of talk out there about social justice, but what is social injustice? This is one of the things
Right.
that I talk about in my workshop experiences. And social injustice, it can take many forms, right? It permeates various aspects of our lives. It could be systemic discrimination in education and healthcare and employment. It can be bias in social interactions, which is what we're talking about here as well. Social injustice requires acknowledging that there are lots of power dynamics at play and that these are not just isolated incidents, but actually
Right.
structural issues that are deeply embedded in these social norms. So when we look at it from that perspective, in terms of the macro level, improvements would be, replacing chronic secrecy and self doubt with body autonomy, basic body literacy, and for everybody, because people who menstruate don't know about their bodies either. I mentioned the Power to the Period workshop earlier. And so I do something funny. These are tweens, preteens and teens. And I ask them, where's your head? Point to your head, point to your arms. They're looking at me like, of course we know where our head is, where our arms are. And I say, show me where your uterus is. And they don't know. They don't know where to point on their body, right? And so this is basic body literacy for everybody. And so when we do this, in terms of these macro level improvements, we're going to see lowered shame, lowered anxiety. We're going to see better health outcomes because, if the topic is no longer taboo, then, people are going to be more likely to talk about it, to be more prompt about seeking medical care, especially for those more severe challenges, rather than dismissing them as normal. This is just normal period pain. No, no, go get help and quickly,
Yes.
and we'll just, or informed support. Informed is the key word in there. So yeah, so this is some of the things that we'll see. And I do see, in my work in this, in my dismantling menstrual stigma experience, it's for everybody. And after I was at a college giving this experience, and afterward, there was a male student who came up to me, a male college student. I was putting my things away. And he said, my little sister, I don't know if she started her period, but I really want to talk to her about it. What should I say? Brittany, my heart melted. I could have cried like right there. Like, that's the point,
Right.
That is the point of having these kind of conversations. This is a big brother, a college student who wants to support his little sister. I've had men thank me for providing a safe space for them to learn some basic stuff because they just didn't know. They feel relieved. So these are some of the macro level improvements that we will see when we make this shift, from secrecy and self-doubt to body autonomy and basic body literacy.
Absolutely. I love that you shared that story about the college student because that was my experience. Once I opened the organization, I was at a vendor's event, and the first male that bought my book, he said, "I'm buying this book because my sister has fibroids and she doesn't want to admit to it. And I think she's
Mm,
been silently suffering. So give me your book, give me your tea, give me all the stuff that you have, and I'm gonna just take
yes,
this kit to her." And I was like, that is so sweet of him. And the thing that resonated even more is once he walked away from me, he walked over to, I don't know if it was his wife, his significant other, but he had 3 daughters. I said, he's
mm,
already preparing,
yes,
he's already on point because all the daughters, I would say maybe 10 and under. So
yeah,
they probably haven't reached that point yet. And he's already so aware of his younger sister. I'm like, I love this. We need more of this. Come on, Black man.
yes.
I'm here for it. So, to close us out, Dr. Carmen, if there is one core truth or psychological tool you want a listener to take into their daily activities this week to begin dismantling inherited shame, what would it be?
So I think I would like to invite everyone to replace one moment of judgment with one moment of curiosity this week.
Ooh,
So whether it's about your own body, someone else's experience, or a topic that you've always been taught not to talk about, just
right.
kind of pause and ask yourself, who taught me to think this way? Or is this belief actually serving me? Or is this serving anybody? The shame, as we've mentioned, thrives in silence, but curiosity can create connection. And
Right.
that's really the heart of my work. So when we become curious instead of critical, we create space for empathy. And when we create empathy, stigma begins to lose its power. And so that's true for menstruation, but it's also true for mental health, for race, for gender, for disability, for any part of the human experience that's been pushed into the shadows. So one curious conversation this week could really change someone's life, and it might even change your own.
Yes, I love that. That's amazing advice. Guys, you better been taking your notes because this was a good one. Now, you heard it from Dr. Carmen Empowers herself. We are extremely grateful for you taking the opportunity to enlighten our listeners, Dr. Carmen. And we manifest that this information resonated with all you listeners who are watching or listening all over the world, which we are so excited just to tap in. We see that we have touched 92 countries and 6 continents. You
Wow.
guys are showing up and showing out for the podcast. So I hope you all took some notes wherever you are in the world. We hope that you did. So we're going to cut to our final commercial break and we will be right back with you.
Fly
Back to the show.
Welcome back from that commercial break. We hope that you all enjoyed it. Now, Dr. Carmen, can you let the listeners know how to reach you, your website, all your social media platforms, and also if you have any upcoming events, initiatives, or campaigns you would like to discuss?
Yes, thank you so much for asking. So my website is drcarmenempowers.com, drcarmenempowers.com. Go there, click around. There's lots there to check out and perhaps be introduced to as well. Yes, I'm on lots of the socials. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. But I think what I really want to emphasize right now is that I'm launching what I'm calling the Connection Catalyst campaign, the Connection Catalyst campaign. And so this is all about creating meaningful connections in every space where people learn, where people work, and where people grow. So my goal is to connect with organizations that are really ready to foster healthier conversations around menstruation, around belonging, around just human connection.
Yes.
And so if you're part of a men's group, a fraternity, a sorority, a college, university, a nonprofit, or maybe even a corporate wellness program, then I would love for you to schedule a complimentary 30-minute conversation so that we can learn about your goals and explore how we might work together. And so I'm intentionally setting aside time on my calendar over the next few months, actually, for these types of, meeting of the minds and meeting of the hearts conversations. And I would just love to meet all those who are interested. So I know we're going to share my Calendly link. Yes. But yeah, you can book a time that works for you. Right now, they're set up for 30 minutes. And if you feel like you want more than 30 minutes and just book 2 back to back, we can go in and really begin to, strategize how we're going to share this message.
Absolutely love that, guys. All of that amazing information will be located in the description of this episode. Now, on our side, we do want to highlight that it is August, so it is National Wellness Month. So we encourage you to proactively manage your wellness mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically in an effort to achieve optimal wellness. I will include an episode surrounding these wellness components for you to use as a refresher on how to manage this effectively with resources and tools from our previous season. Now, next month in September, it is PMOS month. We know it used to be PCOS, but it did change earlier this year. So we're going to have a lot of educational content on how you can manage your metabolic factors that impact your menstrual cycle. Next month is also National Yoga Month. So, we have Pilates for periods, our mindfulness and movement, breathwork, and meditation program that we house all of our content on YouTube. So we're going to be doing something special for Yoga Awareness Month to help you with your menstrual cycles. And then also in September, on September 18th, we are hosting a class for Clinician Fest. I'll be teaching a course on how the Biopsychosocial Model impacts both your mental health and your menstrual cycle journey. So registration for this event and everything mentioned above will also be included in the description of this episode. Now, beautiful beings, let's take a collective, deep, stabilizing breath together to let the wisdom settle into our nervous systems, taking an inhalation through your nostrils and deeply exhaling out of your mouths. Now, what an absolute masterclass in emotional sovereignty and psychological liberation with Dr. Carmen McNeil-Clinkscales. Let's anchor today's core takeaways. Dr. Carmen reminded us that the historical silence, euphemisms, and negative cultural messages surrounding our cycles aren't just minor social nuances. They are psychological conditioning that breaks down body trust and actively stops individuals from practicing clinical self-advocacy. When we adopt her framework of the inner seasons, honoring our internal winter, spring, summer, and fall, we strip away the toxic linear 24-hour hustle narrative and replace it with the cyclical data. Now we give ourselves permission to rest without guilt. And most importantly, when we bring anatomically precise, shame-free health literacy into our households, we are educating our sons, fathers, and partners, we initiate a wave of intergenerational healing that disrupts centuries of inherited body shame. Now, true reproductive equity requires us to break the silence so we can build braver, freer communities. Now, if this episode upgraded your health literacy, if it validated your lived experience, and if it handed you the clinical tools you need to advocate for your own menstrual cycle, do not keep this space a secret. Hit that subscribe button right now. Leave a 5-star like or review on whichever platform you're streaming us on, because we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, all the things. And share this episode with a loved one who has been suffering in silence. For those of you who are only listening to the episode, if you go to our Spotify or YouTube channels, you will be able to see the actual video. So don't miss out on that footage. Now, feel free to share with someone who you feel can resonate with this episode or Dr. Carmen or I's missions. Now, also subscribe to our Pilates for Periods YouTube channel, join our monthly newsletter, and stay deeply connected to all the resources, evidence-based tips, and structural health education that we drop every single week. Now, this information is located also in the description of this episode. Now, if you have any questions or concerns, we are still accepting listeners' mail, so feel free to comment on this episode. However, if you would like a more intimate or private conversation, feel free to email us at contact@kickcrampsass.org, which is also listed in the description of this episode. Now, head over to drcarmenempowers.com to connect with Dr. Carmen's transformational workshops and coaching, and follow her with the information also listed in this episode that we mentioned a few moments ago. Now, gratitude to all of you for tuning in today. We want you to stay deeply mindful, protect your internal peace, and keep moving. We manifest a positive, productive, and peaceful day ahead, week ahead, and menstrual journey ahead. And we will be speaking to you during our next episode on our next Menstruation Monday. Peace.